The Philadelphia 76ers have come back down to reality a little bit after starting out at the NBA's best rate this season. They've now lost 2 games in a row, including the most recent heartbreaking loss to the Celtics. In this video, I'm going to break down why I have some concerns about what is going wrong lately and my overall outlook for why the secret may be lying behind the three-point arc. Before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, 82.8% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to the channel just yet. The Sixers season is in full swing. We have plenty of big plans for the channel coming forward this season, so I want the Sixers Digest family to keep growing. I appreciate it. It helps us out here, so thank you so much. But now let's get into the story of the day. The Sixers coming off a loss to the Celtics, ultimately decided by a 117-107 score. Now, as a whole, I know people are panicking. If you asked me at the start of the season, 11 games in, the Sixers would be 8-3 and have one win over the Celtics already this season, I'd be pretty happy. However, how things went down and how these back-to-back losses ultimately occurred is something I have some serious concerns with. So to begin with, let's dive into the box score here. We can see these starters, no one eclipsing 20 points. Each Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey tied with 20, both well below their averages there. Tobias Harris was 16, Robert Covington was 16, D'Anthony Melton was 16, Paul Reed with 10 points off the bench, and Jaden Springer with 9 points off the bench. But other than that, no other players scored. Now, I want to begin with my biggest concern and biggest point of frustration last night is right at the top, Joel Embiid. We know he was questionable. He was questionable the past 2 games, both against the Pacers and the Celtics. Ultimately ended up suiting up for both matchups. But if he was going to play like that, you might as well have stayed on the bench, man. And it is frustrating that this guy is obviously held to a super high standard. He's the MVP of the league. He's the best player on the Sixers, and so much revolves around him. So when he's not playing his best, like last night, it is very obvious and very clear and really difficult for the Sixers to win without it. To look at it as a whole, a minus 25 in a game that the Sixers lost by 10. The worst plus-minus in the entire game, and you felt that. That the Sixers looked like a better team last night when Paul Reed was on the floor, which should never happen when you're a player of Joel Embiid's caliber. And a lot of these issues that I'm about to dive into kind of stem from him. Now, for starters, I do want to make sure that I acknowledge that the Sixers were very much missing both Nicholas Batum and Kelly Oubre Jr. Both those guys that when this rotation is set in stone, they're going to be 25-plus minute per game players. They're going to play a real role on a night-to-night basis, and both their skill sets were desperately needed last night in a way that the Sixers just did not have them. But on the other side of things, the Celtics were without Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis as well. So it's not like this is something the Sixers can hang their hat on or feel bad about themselves for, because frankly, the Celtics were missing even more important pieces than the Sixers were. But to touch on my biggest issue here is the three-point attempts. The Sixers just are not getting enough volume from the perimeter. And to touch on specifically why, I'll begin with this here. This is becoming a theme. So last night against the Celtics shot 18 of 50 from beyond the three-point arc. Sixers just 11 of 30. So 20 more three-point attempts by the Celtics. And the night before against the Pacers, 13 for 37 from the Pacers beyond the three-point arc. The Sixers just 6 of 22. You just are not going to win that many games when you're being outshot at that rate from beyond the perimeter. And no matter how efficient you are from inside the two-point arc, there's simple math here that beyond the arc is worth 3 points, in front of it is 2. So when you're trading buckets with a team and they're shooting threes and you're scoring twos, they're ultimately going to build up some distance. And this is not just an example. Like, for starters, I know both the Celtics and Pacers are incredibly three-point reliant. The Celtics number 1 in the league in three-point attempts per game this year, but you still can't get outshot by that margin. And the Sixers specifically, to look at them on a league-wide scale, they are ranking 27th in the league in three-point attempts this season at 29.5 points per game. Three-point attempts per game. And the reason that this is so frustrating is when you look at the percentages, and we'll pull this up here, they're ranking 12th in the NBA in 30-point percentage. So it is not an issue of their efficiency. It is purely the volume of what they're putting up. Now, this starts with Tyrese Maxey in this particular conversation. Last night, to look at the box score, Tyrese Maxey led the Sixers in three-point attempts with 7. D'Anthony Melton, 5 of 6. Tyrese Maxey, 3 of 7. Robert Covington, 0 for 5. Tobias Harris, 1 for 2. Joel Embiid, 0 for 2. Nobody on the bench with more than 2 attempts there. For Tyrese Maxey, leading the Sixers in three-point attempts, 3 for 7. Pretty solid numbers there. But when you compare that to the Celtics, there was not a single starter in their lineup to attempt fewer than 8 three-point attempts per game. So when the Sixers' most active or highest volume three-point shooter is not touching anyone in the Celtics starting 5, there is a little bit of a problem here. And why I believe this stems from Joel, and a good deal of it is. Now, again, Kelly Oubre and Nick Batum do change the pictures from a defensive standpoint here. But the Sixers' defense is built around having 4 guys chasing the perimeter and Joel Embiid being a rim-protecting big man. He is at his most comfortable when he is protecting the rim, while he's capable of moving out of the perimeter and defending at a rate which a lot of big men can't. Joel's very clearly more comfortable when he can be an anchor, can be a stabilizing force, and more or less cover up others' mistakes rather than take on his own challenge. At times, that's frustrating, and we saw it last night, that while the Sixers have the four guys who all kind of struggle to contain dribble penetration or really stop guys from blowing by them, Joel is forced to step out, and it led to a number of open threes. Joel also refuses to chase stretch big man out to the perimeter. It's very clearly his least favorite thing to do. He would rather just give them that shot. But when you're playing guys like Al Horford or Kristaps Porzingis, guess what? They're going to take it, and they're going to make the Sixers pay. And they absolutely did last night. So when you're kind of giving these free three-point shots, and the Boston offense is so much about this five-out offense, throw up a ton of three-pointers. They like to play this inside-out style of basketball where they dribble, penetrate, create for others, and it overall looks very effective when they're playing their best. And this Celtics team gave the Sixers a much better effort last night than they did in the first matchup, even without Porzingis and Brown being there last night. But when that is happening, a lot of that responsibility does fall on Joel to have the discipline to remain on the perimeter, to follow your guys, and not just give those shots. Now, I do think the scheme is a factor. I think when we watched the first 3 games of the season, I felt like the defense was not quite on the same page, that it was not clicking. Then we look over this next stretch of games, and it's clear that it was, that everyone was in the same spot. They knew how to cover for each other because Nick Nurse does not play a traditional style of either man-to-man or zone defense where you're locked in on either a spot or a guy. There's much more blitzing, much more trapping, much more movement, and there's constantly rotations in a way that a traditional NBA defense, you really don't see that much. That is one of the reasons Nick Nurse is a great coach, and one of the reasons that I'm encouraged about what the ceiling of the Sixers team could be different, because this is not a Doc Rivers style where you're allowing a man to match up one-on-one. You're just leaving DeAnthony Melton on an island against Jason Tatum. That's not going to produce good results, and it has not in years past. But when you have these blitzing techniques, these trapping techniques, it does raise the overall ceiling of what this Sixers team can do. But the downside of that is when it's not working, and it has not looked like it has been clicking these past 2 games, is it leads to open shots, leads to bad rotations, and ultimately bad decisions. Now, to dive into specifics of some other guys that I have concerns with, I want to begin with the bench. And once again, I know I've mentioned it twice now, but Kelly Oubre and Nick Batum do change the rotations and how this looks. Marcus Morris last night played 8 minutes, shot 0 for 3 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 1 turnover, and was a minus 16 in his 8 minutes of play. I want to like Marcus Morris. I really do. I know he's a North Philly guy. I know he does a ton of good for the community. I've interviewed him a couple times, and he's a very good human being. But he's just cooked as a basketball player at this point in time, and I see no reason why this guy should continue to get minutes. If we're comparing him to guys like Jaden Springer or Paul Reed, or we have yet to see KJ Martin even, just give those guys a chance. At least we know they might be something. Let's find out. I know what Marcus Morris is, and what he is a player not good enough to be in a rotation on a contending team at this point in his career. It does suck. At a point in time, he was a good player. I'm happy that he had his homecoming and is happy to be here, but there's just no reason for him to be seeing minutes on the court. In addition, Patrick Beverley, 10 minutes last night, 0 for 4 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3, 0 for 2 at the free throw line. He had 1 rebound, had 1 assist, had 1 foul, and was a minus 17 in his 10 minutes of play. Now, overall, I like what Pat Bev has brought to this team so far, that he does bring good energy. His defensive effort has had some real flashes, but last night was the worst that he has played in a Sixers uniform. Now, there was a little schematic change from the Nick Nurse style of things here that, for the most part this season, it's been DeAnthony Melton has been the guy trusted as the backup point guard, that he's been asked to do some of the playmaking responsibilities, call some plays, run the offense, do all these things. That has shifted, and we're seeing DeAnthony Melton get that taken off his plate. He's more locked in as a spot-up shooter, a guy who's a defense-first style of player who's able to create a little bit, but he's more in a score-first role at this point, and he has benefited a major way. To look at his stats last night, he finished with 16 points, shot 5 of 6 from 3, 5 of 10 from the field, and this coming the night after that he dropped 30 points in that Pacers matchup, and the Sixers needed every one of those. But for Pat Bev specifically, he's been asked to step up in this role to be the backup point guard now. And it just did not click last night. That he did not look effective enough at running the offense. The three-pointer, it looks like he's got no legs on him at this point. They all look short. They all look like they're forcing him. And it really does suck because I like what Pat Bev brings to his team. I'm willing to overlook this and give it another chance, but that was the worst minutes that Pat Bev has provided for the Sixers. Now, to touch on a couple others, Paul Reed and Jaden Springer, I'll lump into one here. Those were the best bench minutes that we've seen. And shout out Jaden Springer playing 20 minutes, a season high for this. He earned every minute of those. He had 9 points, 2 rebounds, 2 steals, shot 4 or 5 from the field, hit a corner 3, 1 of 1 there. And then Paul Reed, in his 14 minutes of play, finished with 10 points, 6 rebounds, 3 of them coming off offensive rebounds, 2 assists and a block, and was a plus 15 in his 14 minutes of play. Those are the type of energy guys that the Sixers need. And the difference between when you're comparing them to a Pat Bev and Marcus Morris is, number one, there's youth. There's energy, and there's athleticism in both Jaden Springer and Paul Reed. And by the way, stay posted for later that I will be recording a little Jaden Springer breakdown on why he must get more minutes, and I think both these guys do. We've also yet to see the Paul Reed and Joel Embiid on the floor at the same time, which is the type of lineup versatility that I just need to see. I want to see what it looks like. Nick Nurse, give it to me. If it doesn't work, we can scrap it, but let's try. That's what I want to see more of. That we're only 11 games in the season. We have 70 more to play on this year. Let's get crazy. Let's try some stuff. Now is the time. I've been very frustrated with the Sixers organization these past couple years for the same game script and same style of play night in and night out. That is what I want to see different from Nick Nurse. Now is the time to try things. We know what has not worked come playoff time in years past. Let's find out what might. Let's try what looks different. So I do want to see those guys get more of an opportunity. I am happy that Nurse stuck with Jaden Springer. He played the entire 12 minutes in the second quarter because the Sixers just couldn't take him out, and he ultimately did change that game. Sixers dropped behind by 17 in the first quarter. Springer was a huge part in turning the tides and giving them an ounce of life. It was not enough ultimately, but at least that is a noteworthy takeaway moving forward. As a whole, the Sixers are still in a good spot. They're 11-3 on the year, right up there with the Eastern Conference best. They still have these assets in their pocket, and they can make that win-now move when the time is right. But there are some internal fixes that need to be made regardless of who's on the roster. They got to find a way to manufacture more three-point attempts. Joel Embiid has to bring a higher energy level on a night-to-night basis, and until those things can happen, I do limit this team's ceiling as a championship contender. But if those are fixable, the sky could truly be the limit, and that one piece coming to Philadelphia in a trade could change things entirely. For now, we will wait. Let me know your thoughts on last night, how heartbroken you were after those losses, or if it was something you kind of accept. I weigh the Celtics loss significantly more than the Pacers. The Pacers was a back-to-back. They play a run-and-gun style of play. They pretty much ran the Sixers out of the gym in that one. It happens. It's a young team. They played hard. I'll give them a benefit of the doubt. Sixers aren't going 82-0. The Celtics loss, that one for me stung a little more. That I did see the real takeaways for why I have concerns with this team, and ultimately it always hurts to lose to the Celtics. But I do want to hear from you guys in the comments. Once again, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like for this video. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.